My stepson said that I am not his real father and I have no authority to tell him to do anything. There's a line, isn't there? A moment when betrayal hits so hard. You realize you've been living a complete lie. For me, it was when my stepson, the kid I poured everything into, looked at me with pure contempt and said, "You're nothing to me. You're nobody." That's when I knew he wasn't getting another dime from me, especially not for college. What the hell happened next? Well, buckle up. I never thought I'd share this, but it's been eating at me, and I just need to get it off my chest. My name's Robert, I'm 45, and I own this really successful upscale wine bar. Built it from the ground up, all on my own, and I'm damn proud of it. About 5 years ago, that bar actually introduced me to someone, or so I thought at the time. Melissa. She was the bookkeeper I hired to manage the financials. Smart, efficient, and she had this quiet elegance that really drew me in. It wasn't just that she was good at her job. There was a warmth about her. Something that made those late nights, buried in financial reports, a little less tedious. At first, we kept it strictly professional. She was new. I didn't want to overstep. But as the weeks went by, I found myself lingering in her office a little longer, coming up with all sorts of excuses to check on her work, just to be near her. Eventually, I just went for it. "Let me take you to dinner," I said one evening, after we'd finally wrapped up. She hesitated, just for a second, then that smile. "Are you asking as my boss or as a man?" she teased. "As a man," I told her. That first dinner spiraled into another, then another, and before I knew it, we were talking about a future. Everything felt perfect. Melissa was attentive, her son. Ethan was polite, well-mannered. I genuinely thought I'd finally found the family I'd always wanted. A year into dating, we got married. Melissa and Ethan moved into my house, and for a while it was great. I dove headfirst into being the best stepdad I could be. I took Ethan to sports games, helped him with school projects, made sure he had everything he needed. Family vacations, paid. Latest sneakers, bought. I wanted to give him the kind of life I wished I'd had at his age. Now, Ethan would see his biological dad, Kevin, from time to time. And honestly, I was never fully comfortable with it. Not with what I knew about Kevin's past. Apparently, he'd practically burned down their old apartment multiple times in drunken rages, which was why he lost custody in the first place. But Melissa insisted. "It's important for Ethan to maintain that connection," she'd say, and he's gotten sober now. She'd always end with, "He's still his father. Ethan needs to know his dad still cares about him." I remember seeing Kevin at a school event once. He didn't look sober to me. There was this slight sway, even when he was standing still. His eyes couldn't quite focus. My gut screamed, but I kept my mouth shut. Who was I to interfere? Just the stepfather, right? God, if only I had known then what I know now. My wish to be the perfect stepfather, I think, completely blinded me to what was really going on. But hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? And the real trouble hadn't even begun. Not even close. Before I knew it, time flew by, and Ethan's 18th birthday was coming up. His birthday and graduation were looming, and he was walking around the house like a nervous wreck. What if something goes wrong? What if people don't come? What if this isn't perfect? He'd say over and over. One evening, finding him overthinking, I put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Hey, everything's cool," I told him. "As a matter of fact, I've got a brilliant idea. Why don't we hold your party at the bar? We can reserve the best section in the house." Instantly, his eyes lit up. My wine bar had become a hot spot, and Ethan had been dying to show it off. "Really?" he gasped, already reaching for his phone. "Oh my God, my Instagram is going to be insane. Everyone at school is going to be so jealous." I flung myself into preparations. I wanted everything to be perfect for him. I even took him shopping for a designer suit, a sleek black number that made him look like a junior businessman. He looked every inch the young professional. "How many guests do you think you'll invite?" I asked one evening, going over the details. He fiddled with his phone, hesitating for a moment. "About 30 people." Great, I said. Can you send me a guest list so I can make sure we have enough space and food? Oh, I don't really have one yet, he said hastily. Just plan for 30, okay? In retrospect, I wish I had pushed for that list, but I was so caught up in preparing everything. The tables were set, the lighting was golden and warm. The atmosphere at my Upper West Side wine bar was nothing short of just right. It had been transformed into the perfect venue for an 18-year-old's birthday. Sophisticated yet young, with a select menu of virgin cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Ethan looked smashing in his tailored black suit, standing near a cluster of his friends, laughing and taking snapshots. Melissa's family was there, mingling with his classmates. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. And then he walked in. I recognized Kevin immediately, even before he opened his mouth. He swayed slightly with each step, uneven, eyes glassy. He was drunk. "I am here to wish my son a happy birthday," he declared loudly, drawing everyone's attention. I was sitting next to Ethan when his father stumbled toward our table, his gaze landing on me with pure contempt. "Get up," he slurred, waving his hand dismissively. "That's my seat. I'm his real father, not you." I kept my voice calm and measured. "There is ample seating with the other guests at the next table, Kevin. Why don't you join them?" "No." This time his voice was sharp, almost a growl. "This is my place. You need to leave my place. Who do you think you are?" I looked to Melissa, desperately for her to intervene, to do something, anything to diffuse the situation. But she just sat there, face pale, staring down at her hands as if they held the answers to all her problems. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was Ethan's night. I wasn't about to let it be completely ruined if I could prevent it. "Let me be crystal clear," I said, my eyes deadlocked with Kevin's. "You have two options. Either have a seat at the next table with the other guests, or have security escort you out." His face contorted with anger. "Oh, listen to you, Mr. Moneybags." "Throwing his weight around," he spat, swaying slightly as he leaned on the edge of the table for balance. "You think you can buy everything, don't you? By my son? By my family's love." Other patrons were starting to stare. I could see some of my regulars, trying to feign indifference, but clearly hanging on every word. My staff hovered near the edges of the room, awaiting my cue. "You just waltz in here with your fancy bar, your big house," Kevin spat, his voice rising with every sentence. "Think you can replace me just because you've got money? Well, guess what? You can't buy family." With that, before anyone could react, he reached out and pitched a plate of charcuterie onto the floor. Crash! The sound of glass echoed in the sudden, dead silence of the bar. Then another and another. Fine cheeses and cured meats splattered across the expensive marble flooring. A bottle of imported sparkling water tipped over, spilling across the polished wood. I caught my security team's eye and gave a subtle nod. They moved in smoothly, professionally, just as they'd been trained. "Sir, it's time for you to leave," the head of security said firmly, taking Kevin's arm. I watched them walk him out, his drunken protest sliding into slurred, incoherent screams that bounced off the hall until the front door swung, shut behind him. Silence. Then, gradually, the murmur of the guests picked up again. I rose, putting on the brightest owner's smile I could muster. "Really sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. Please let the evening go on. Drinks are on the house." It didn't ruffle the feathers of the regulars. They were used to a little drama. After a few minutes, they went back to their conversations. But at our table, Ethan's friends and family just sat there. The whispers were constant. I could see them shooting glances at Ethan, at Melissa, at me. The story would be all over social media by morning. Ethan sat ramrod straight, moving the food around on his plate. The sleek suit that had made him look so grown up earlier now seemed to swallow him, making him small and vulnerable. The Instagram perfect party he dreamed of had quickly turned into a nightmare. After about an hour, he grumbled, "I have a headache. Can we go home?" The party was over soon after that. People made polite excuses, but I could hear them whispering as they left. Poor Ethan! Did you see his dad? Can you believe what happened? The minute we were inside the house, Ethan went straight to his room. I followed Melissa upstairs, then went to his room, wanting to talk to him, to say something. The next morning, after the disastrous birthday party, Ethan came down to breakfast with circles under his eyes. He took his chair, eyes glued to his lap. How are you feeling, buddy? I asked softly. Fine, he grumbled into his cereal bowl. And that was that. One word. The days that followed were like living in some kind of ghost house. Ethan, who had always been so energetic and chatty, became practically a stranger. Every time I entered a room where he was talking to Melissa, he'd shut down, like someone had hit a mute button. One evening, when Ethan had gone to bed, I tried bringing it up with Melissa. Don't you think we should do something? Maybe get him to talk to someone. She waved a hand dismissively. He's fine. He's just processing what happened. Give him space. But it wasn't fine. None of this was fine. Despite the tension in our household, we all attended Ethan's graduation ceremony. Melissa and I sat in the audience, and I clapped until my hands hurt when they called his name. He looked great in his cap and gown, and for a moment, as he glanced our way and smiled, I thought maybe things were finally getting better. Of course, we held a party later at the house. I made all his favorites: truffle fries, steak sliders, those little crab cakes he was always swiping from the kitchen at the bar. Even an outrageous 3-tiered chocolate cake that really should have taken a week to get right. His classmates came over, and for a while the house was filled with laughter and excited chatter about college plans and summer vacations. For a few hours, everything felt almost normal again. Ethan was smiling, talking, looking like his old self. I started to relax, thinking maybe we had finally turned a corner. Then his phone rang. Ethan went out into the hall to answer it, and when he came back a few minutes later, there was something different in his face, a quiet resolve. He came to me directly for the first time in days, with any degree of willingness. My dad's coming over, he said. He wants to congratulate me on graduating. My stomach dropped. Absolutely not, I said without a second's hesitation. The fresh memories of his birthday disaster were still too vivid. Ethan, think about what happened at your birthday. He showed up drunk, caused a scene, destroyed property. That was your fault. Ethan cut me off, his voice rising. None of that would have happened if you had just moved and let him sit down. He's my real dad. You should have just stepped aside. I stood there feeling like I'd just been punched in the gut. All this time, after days of silence, this is what he had been thinking? That I was the one to blame? I turned desperately to Melissa, hoping for once she would say something. Just step up and be the mother Ethan needed. Melissa, please, I pleaded. Tell him how inappropriate his father's behavior was at the birthday party. But she just sat there, looking at her hands as if they held the secrets to the universe. The same silence, the same cowardice I had witnessed at the wine bar that night. Something inside me snapped. 5 years of being the perfect stepfather. 5 years of treading on eggshells. 5 years of making excuses for everyone else's behavior. 5 years of swallowing frustration. And it all came pouring out. Listen to me, Ethan, I said, clear but firm. That was my wine bar. I set that whole party up for you. I got you that damn designer suit you wanted. I did everything to make that night special. And your dad? He arrived drunk, publicly shamed you, and caused property damage. He didn't even get you a present, Ethan. What he did was bring chaos and embarrassment. In an instant, Ethan's face went from angry to absolutely furious. Oh my God, here we go again, he shouted, throwing his hands up. It's all about the money with you, isn't it? I paid for this. I bought that. You think because you have the money, you can control everything. He spun around to face his classmates, who were standing awkwardly in the living room, obviously wishing they were anywhere else. My real dad will be here soon, he said with a bitter laugh. It'll be nice to finally have a normal person here instead of this. He gestured to me as if I was some filth he'd stepped on. Your father is not coming into this house. I tried to say, modulating my voice against the rise of anger and hurt inside me. Not after what happened at the bar. That was when Ethan totally lost it. His face flushed red, and he began yelling at me, right there in front of all his guests. You're not my dad, he shrieked. You're nothing to me. You're nobody. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? Keep your nose out of my life. You're just some guy my mom married for his money. The room fell dead silent. I could see his friends fidgeting uncomfortably, some checking their phones, others fascinated by the ceiling. Ethan turned back to them, his voice dripping with venom. Let's get out of here. I don't want to celebrate in his house anyway. He emphasized the word as like it was something filthy. His friends quickly filed out, no one making eye contact with me. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I stood there alone, amidst the abandoned food and scattered plates, hit by a virtual truck. This had to be it. It had to have been enough. Finally, at last, Melissa would say something. She would have to rise to my defense after this, wouldn't she? Melissa cleared her throat. When she spoke, she was cold, detached. You had no right to throw the house and money in his face like that, she said flatly. You didn't need to remind him this is your house, that your money pays for everything. That was low. I stared at her, seeing her for the first time. You've got to be kidding me right now. Where were you when your ex was hurling plates across my wine bar? Where were you just now when your son stood up in front of his entire graduating class and started screaming insults at me? Melissa just shook her head, as if I was the crazy one. You're the adult here, she snapped. You should know better than to get into an argument with a teenager. I let out a bitter laugh. And you should know better than to bury your head in the sand like a coward, I shot back. But that's what you do, isn't it? You just sit there silently while your ex-husband and your son treat me like garbage. Well, guess what? I'm done being everyone's punching bag. Melissa's face clouded, and she didn't say another word. Turning, she started upstairs, and after a few minutes, I heard the slamming of the guest room door. The next morning, breakfast felt like a funeral. Melissa sat across from me, sliding scrambled eggs listlessly around her plate, carefully avoiding eye contact. I was just getting ready to rise and leave the table when Ethan lurched into the kitchen, still dressed in last night's graduation party attire. I caught his alcohol breath about halfway between his door and the table. I glanced sideways at Melissa, just waiting for something, anything, regarding her teenage son, reeking of booze, coming home at 9 a.m. But as was often the case, she said nothing, only stared at her plate. Where have you been all night? I asked neutrally. Ethan turned to me, his bloodshot eyes full of contempt. None of your business, he sneered. You're not my dad. You're not anyone. Just some empty space taking up room in this house. Then he turned and stumbled upstairs to bed. Melissa just sat there, silent again. By this stage, I was thinking silence was some kind of superpower she possessed. The week that followed was like trying to live in a house plagued by the poltergeist from hell. Ethan wouldn't speak to me directly at all. Instead, he'd talk about me as if I weren't there. Dad, he'd say to Melissa, pointing at me like I was a piece of furniture. Can you ask your husband to pass the salt? Or he'd walk into a room and say to his mother, this guy is in my way, and then just stand there waiting for me to move. I said nothing. I kept watching. 5 years I had wasted trying to be the perfect stepfather. Now I was out. Let them show their real colors. And boy, was I in for a show and tell. Sunday. Melissa and I sat down to another silent dinner when Ethan burst into the dining room, waving an envelope around like he'd just won some kind of lottery. Dad, I got in, he exclaimed, practically bouncing up and down. NYU accepted me. I got into my dream school. I watched him run up to Melissa, hugging her tightly, both of them grinning from ear to ear. Then Ethan turned to her and, with a smirk I will never forget, said, "Tell your husband he needs to pay for my tuition." Something inside me just snapped. I smiled, but not a warm, happy smile. A cold, sharp one. "I won't be paying for your college education," I said clearly. "You've made it very clear that I'm not your father. I'm nobody, remember? Well, guess what? This nobody's wallet is closed. Why don't you ask your real dad to pay for college?" Ethan's face went an alarming shade of red. "You vindictive piece of," he started shaking. Tears brimmed in his eyes, but I felt nothing. "You're doing this to punish me. You're just evil." I stood there, feeling strangely calm as he hurled insult after insult at me. It was like watching a storm through a window. I could see the chaos, but it couldn't touch me anymore. "Mom." Ethan whirled to Melissa. "Make him pay. He has to pay." Melissa cleared her throat, adopting that patronizing tone I had grown to hate. "Come on, honey, quit joking around," she said to me. "You know you need to pay for Ethan's education." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I've made myself perfectly clear. I will not pay tens of thousands of dollars in tuition for someone who spent weeks telling me I'm nothing to him. Someone who treats me as if I don't exist in my own home." Then I turned and walked out of the dining room, Ethan's screams following me up the stairs. I could hear him throwing what sounded like another spectacular tantrum. Plates crashing, chairs scraping, theatrical sobs. Like father, like son, I thought grimly. I sat in my bedroom, listening as the chaos downstairs slowly died down. But I knew it wasn't over. Melissa would be up soon enough, ready to play her part in this family drama. Sure enough, about 30 minutes later, my bedroom door burst open. Melissa stormed in, red-faced with anger. "I'm sick of it," she spat at me. "Sick of you and your games. You need to grow up and pay for Ethan's education." I looked calmly at her from where I sat on the bed. "No, you and your ex can figure out how to pay for NYU. I'm sure between the two of you, you can work something out." Melissa's jaw tightened. She started pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're being completely selfish. He's just a teenager, for God's sake. You're the adult here. You need to be the bigger person." I watched her, remembering all the times she had used that same argument. "Be the bigger person, Robert. Let it go, Robert. He's just a kid, Robert." Always making excuses. Always smiling, nodding, and opening my wallet as they treated me like dirt. I took a deep breath and slowly let it out. "A teenager who's old enough to know better," I said quietly. "A teenager who has made it very clear how he feels about me. Why should I invest in his future when he has shown me nothing but contempt?" Melissa stopped her pacing and slowly turned in my direction. Her expression was cold. "Fine then. Let me make this simple for you. Either you pay for Ethan's education, or I'm filing for divorce." She clearly expected me to cave, to break down, cry, or beg her not to leave. To pay instantly. That's what the better man would do, right? I shrugged. "Okay, get divorced." The expression on her face was almost comic. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but words wouldn't spill out. Apparently, she had not expected me to call her bluff. "I will call my lawyer first thing in the morning," I said, my voice firm. "Until then, you and Ethan can start finding yourselves a new place to live." Melissa said nothing but stood looking at me, almost for the first time. Finally, with no word said, she turned and left, closing the door quietly behind her. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Ethan already at the dining table, waiting for me like some sort of ambush. The scene was perfectly staged. Ethan with his red-rimmed eyes, Melissa with her carefully practiced look of concerned authority. "Honey," Melissa said, smiling that manipulative smile I had somehow never noticed before. "We've all had a chance to calm down and think about things." Ethan nodded profusely, like a well-bred puppet. We all just overreacted yesterday, he said, his voice dripping with honey. I stood in the doorway, feeling a strange sense of clarity wash over me. It was like I was seeing them both for the first time, really seeing them. Melissa kept going, her voice taking on that reasonable tone she always used when she wanted something. We're family. Families fight, but they also make up. And since you were the one who escalated things with this whole college situation, it would mean a lot if you took the first step toward reconciliation. Ethan jumped in right on cue. Yeah, and if you helped with tuition, it would show that you're really sorry and want to make things right. I almost laughed. They really thought they could manipulate me this easily? That all it would take was some fake remorse and rehearsed lines about family? Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I just got off the phone with my lawyer 5 minutes ago. The divorce papers should be ready by this afternoon. Their expressions changed in a flash. Ethan's fake smile vanished, and his face showed pure shock. Melissa's face turned that familiar shade of angry red. I turned to Ethan. Congratulations, I said flatly. You won't have to deal with your not dad interfering in your life anymore. Isn't that what you wanted? Ethan burst into tears. Real ones this time, not the calculated ones from before. But I was done being manipulated by teenage tears. Melissa sprang to her feet, so hard her chair almost toppled. Without another word, she stormed upstairs. Moments later, I could hear her yanking drawers open, slamming closet doors. They packed in dead silence. No more abusive speeches, no more insincere apologies. Just the sound of suitcases being filled and doors being slammed. I thought it was finally over. I was wrong. The messages started that same night. First from Melissa. We all said things we regret. Let's talk about this like adults. Then from Ethan. I am so sorry if I hurt your feelings, but you are really being totally unfair about college. When I said nothing, they got meaner. You are being obstructive and destroying this family. I hope you enjoy being all alone with your money. You'll be sorry later when you are old and alone with nobody. I said nothing. The divorce was quick. I had made sure there was a prenup, naturally. Melissa tried to fight it, but my lawyer took care of it quickly. She got nothing. Not a penny of my wine bar's profits. Not a dime of my savings. I still hear things about them sometimes, through mutual friends. They're living in a small apartment across town. Ethan couldn't afford NYU and is now working at a mall somewhere. Melissa is struggling to restart her accounting career, but it's not going well. I've since redecorated the house, gotten rid of all the furniture that reminded me of them. The place feels bigger these days. Lighter somehow. Or maybe that's just me. Finally free of the weight of trying to buy love from people who are only ever interested in selling it. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something like this, where you just had to draw a line in the sand, no matter how painful? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.